my gosh.
When did we do that? Was that today?
I'm so happy to have in-ears.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna do it. What was that? We made it! Yay!
It honestly did.
We're all serving the Lord. Okay. He knows you're here. He knows where you were. Come on over. We're just getting started. Okay.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm Daniel.
Daniel Jacob.
Jacob, nice to meet you. All right, well, welcome. All right, so we're here on the stage. How many of you are used to being on the stage? But can't use it. Okay, so you'll notice when we look around the stage, okay, there are inputs, right? So you see all these inputs here? So in order to understand what the console does, it's helpful to know actually what's going to it. So you will have different inputs on the stage that correspond to channels, which is what these are in here. And you see the XL, so this is called the XLR cable. You guys ever seen these before? So, anybody know what this is called? This is called a direct box. So what this does is this actually takes signals that need to come out at a quarter inch. This cable right there. So the value of this box is that you can't take this. You can't really do what you can't really do that. So it's like, how am I going to get this into the system? You have to have an XLR cable, a box like this, and then it says in and out on it. So you put that in the input, and usually that will go into like this guitar or something. So anyway, it's good for you to know like this is the way that you get signals in. And then when these microphones are plugged in, you have plates on the front out here too. And these are fun because they say do not use. So that's typically saying that channel might have like a bad, plugged in. So this is important because this is actually how you get audio into the board. So if it's not plugged in up here, then it probably isn't going back there. Does that make sense? Easy? So the main thing is this one says do not use, this one says channel 10. So when this plugs in, my assumption is that it's going to be this microphone should be channel 10 on that one.
So it's different from what the channel would be different than what the
Totally. So like that's channel 10, but over here should be listed here. That's channel 14, 15, 16. If I plug in there, channel 14 is back to that board. So that's where it should come in. And it's also over here you've got special 3, special 2, and special 1. So I don't know actually what those correspond to back there, but we would plug in and find that out. But anyway, that's how you get a signal in. Sometimes, let's just say like you have a bass amp, or you have an acoustic amp, and you're wanting to run something direct into your system. What you can do is, a lot of times with amplifiers, they will have an output. Can you see this right here? It says direct output, and you notice this cable? So you have two controls. One control is, this is the direct output going to the board. And then you have a completely separate volume of like the speaker. So in this situation, what I would do is I would turn the speaker down all the way and make sure that the house has the most volume first, and then fill this in. Because if you plug something in and you just crank this stuff really loud, they might say, we don't even need that in the house. Like, it's just too loud. Yeah. And you're always trying to keep the stage volume down. That's the most important thing. Anytime you have a stage, this is where like, anybody been to a church where like the drum kit is in an enclosure? So.
Yeah, I need you to switch it out. That keeps going in and out of the mouth.
Oh, is it? Okay. Try that. See if that works. I'm about to clip it to my lip. Okay. All right. All right. Can you hear that? So anyway, but have you ever been to the church environment where it's in a enclosure? So obvious question, but why would you enclose the drums? Keep the stage noise down, and then you usually would see a bunch of microphones, right? So the microphones is to have control for the room. Because in a room like this, you already have a lot of things happening. So you might find that you're like, when he plays the drums, we have plenty of snare drum, we have way too many cymbals, but we have no kick drum. So all I'm going to do is turn the kick drum up, and now it sounds balanced in the room, right? So every little situation can be a little different, but this is how you get signal into the board back there. And so if you have different people who play, it's important to know, like, okay, so if I'm going to play the bass guitar, and he comes up, he says, okay, where's my channel? How do I plug into the system to go back to that board? Most likely, he's going to have a direct box like this, and then a 1/4-inch cable, which is what these are called 1/4 inches. Did everybody know that? It's called a 1/4-inch instrument cable. So probably what we would do is we would take this, plug this into the input, have his channel look like this, and then he would have that in, plug into his bass, and now when he plays, you've got bass guitar back there. I don't know that you'll necessarily have to be so worried about that, because typically whoever would come in and set it up for a weekend would kind of know, hey, they're going to plug into this channel. But it's just good for you to know. On the bass amp over here, you probably are going to see, you see this thing that says line out? Okay, so this says line out. Does it look familiar, like what that looks like? So again, if you wanted to come right out of the bass amp, so what he could do is plug into the amplifier, then you could run a line out direct with the XLR right into that channel, and then you have bass going right to the system. The only thing sometimes you have to pay attention to is this little button actually has a like push it in if you want that to turn on, or push it out if you want it. So if you don't have signal, it might be that it's all plugged in, but actually this isn't engaged. So you might have to come up and like push that. So it's good to kind of know like what little each device does. Let's go to the keys. Yeah. Oh yeah. Question. Anyone who has a question, just ask right away.
So, what would you use like to return drop? You have like output.
Yeah.
So, what would you put like in the output? Or is it both in one output?
So that's called a parallel output. So what that means is you can plug into this, it will send it to the system. You could also plug a 1/4 inch into there, and the same signal can actually be sent somewhere else. So let's say I'm playing acoustic. I'm playing acoustic, and I'm plugged in just like this. So here's my acoustic, all right? So I'm playing, but I'm also like, you know what? I really want this to go to my amplifier or my little amp on stage. But my amp on stage doesn't have a direct out, okay? So that's not even in the That's not even in the mix. But I still want my sound to go there. I can go out of this box, plug into the input of that, and I'm basically duplicating my signal now to two places. That make sense? Yeah, yeah. Any questions?
What about, when we're plugged in here, how far that will
Mhm. Yeah. So probably either your gain, so we'll be going over the structure of the console, but it's either that your gain is just way too low, or it could be that you need to have a powered direct box. So this is what's called a passive direct box right here. But they make them that are powered, and when they're powered, it basically is like a little bit of oomph to your signal. So it just allows you to pump your signal up as you send it back to the console. So there's a way to kind of give you a bunch of extra gain or volume going into the board. So it could be that too, that you need to have some powered boxes instead of, those are considered passive. So passive just means no power. Powered means they need phantom power, which we'll go over at the console. But yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's the difference between having like an access point and then having your main that's talking to it. So you're trying to figure out how to make that work. So these are like a couple, I mean, I know we're kind of going quick, but these are a couple of various connections to these things. Does that kind of make sense? And then let's go over to the keys. Yeah. So we just installed an in-ear setup here that was not here before. So typically what would happen is when they were playing, you hear sound going that way in the room, but on stage you don't hear it. And it's not very good to hear sound after it reflects, because if you've ever heard an ambulance go by, you know how it goes like, right? So what happens is if you're singing on stage and I'm hearing my vocal hit the wall and come back to me, and I'm trying to sing in tune, I will always be out of tune because I'm not hearing actually my real pitch. So what you typically want is some kind of an in-ear monitor where you can hear in real time what your actual pitch is and what you're really doing. And then you can hear other people too. Well, this would have helped if you had no in-ears, that being on stage and angled up, then I'm hearing my real pitch because it's coming at me and not reflecting. Correct, except now with the in-ear mixes that we can put in here, right here, so that and then they're able to turn up their own, like their vocal, and yeah, these are all new. So that way they have the ability to hear in real time all their stuff. And then you wouldn't need that because you'd actually have headphones in, what they call in-ears. So yeah. Okay. Guys, we just solved a ton of issues over there, so you have no idea. All right, so here's the keys. So let me ask you, how do you think that the keys are connected based on what we just went through?
To the
other piano.
All right, so piano. So that piano. This is great. I love this. So that piano would be right. Follow the chaos, right? So now it's attached to it. So what's the mic doing? Obviously.
It's obviously catching the sound to make it bigger.
Yep. So it's catching the sound to be able to put it into the speakers through the console. Yeah, that's right. So this is a keyboard. So how's the keyboard plugged in? Yeah. Yeah, that's quarter. There you go. There you go. So the 1/4 inch is not plugged in. or the direct box is not plugged in, but that's how they're getting signal from here. Now this also has speakers, but the speakers are irrelevant because the speakers don't send anything to us. So the person on stage is like, typically what happens with these is when you plug this in, the speakers go away because it's trying to only send signal to the console. And then the other thing about when you're plugging in instruments and stuff, and we're about to go over this in the back, but you want to make sure that the volume of whatever someone's playing is up to max or as close to max as can be without distorting, like you don't hear something really weird, because you want the loudest possible signal coming into the board before you're giving a lot of extra boost from the board. Because we'll go over this in the back, but like everything has what's called a noise floor. And in the noise floor, there's just a line level amount of noise that always exists. So if I took a channel and we just turn it on, in fact, we can do it, but you'll kind of hear this just like, right? And as soon as something's plugged into it, it will basically ground that noise and it will take it away, but it's still there. It just drops it significantly. Well, if this is turned down really low, then I have to go back and basically turn the sound of that channel way up. And when I do that, it's going, and now the keys might still be there, but you hear this noise. The goal that you're always trying to accomplish is to have the least amount of noise and the highest amount of actual signal you want. And the illusion is that there's no noise. There's always noise, but the illusion is that you're trying to get rid of it. So that's what they would consider like a gain structure. You want your gain to be really good, and so we'll go over that here in the back, but this would be how you do that. Let's say that we were going to mic up these drums. So typically with drums, what do we use to mic them up? To mic them up.
Yeah, we usually one microphone. I mean, we're kind of limited to the amount of microphones that we have.
Sure.
So we utilize, this is a pulpit microphone.
Yeah.
We realize we can plug that in.
Yeah.
And we can use that to mic the drums.
Yeah.
I mean, it
And
does a great
do you have drums every week or some weeks or not every week? No weeks really?
We might have the.
It's what? You don't, yeah.
We usually do not have that drum.
Yeah.
Because they haven't, I wouldn't say they, but the talent hasn't arrived.
Yeah.
I'll say it that way.
Yeah.
But there has been Sundays that we've had it.
Yeah.
And we did have it, and we just utilized what we had.
Yeah.
And that microphone did a great job. It picked it up. And
Yeah.
It's like, man, hey, it worked.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about, recording for the stream, live stream.
Sure.
Like, oh, okay. But, that's a whole different, mix job. It's like, oh, do we have a full stream?
Yeah, so you probably can capture sound with your microphone there, but those are not really drum microphones. So the one thing to know, especially from the stage perspective when you're thinking of sound, is that different things are made in order to produce the sounds for those instruments. And if you're doing acoustic instruments like this, there are certain microphones that are made specifically to handle drums. They're very like high pressure. When you're kicking and hitting snare, like there's a lot of pressure and air moving. So these microphones are designed for that, so that way they help to translate all of that to the console. So in the future, what you might see is this could be in a little enclosure, or maybe it'll be wide open. But you might find that there's like, a big looking mic here and mics clipped on here, but those microphones would be designed to basically pick up each drum.
Each one for each.
Yep. And then one thing that like you guys wouldn't have to worry about right now, but when you have a bunch of microphones running on the same source, you have what's called phase. And so phase is basically, if you ever look at how sound waves look, it looks like a wave. So you have a crest that goes up, right? You have like a line. So you have a positive, and then you have a negative that goes down, and it basically goes like this. Well, when you have a microphone where the first direction of it goes upwards, and then you put another mic up, and the next mic actually moves where it looks like it goes downward. The downward and the upward at the same time cancel each other. So you start to get these really weird sounds in your system, and you have to go through and do a lot of what's called checking the phase to make sure that all the microphones are all moving the same direction. And the big issue is that there's little capsules inside, and so when you hit something, if the air is pushing towards it, the capsule will go in first because the air is going this way, right? So it hits the capsule, and the capsule goes like that. But if it's above you and you hit it, it takes a lot more time for the sound to go. So sometimes the capsule will just go like this, not nearly as much. So they're producing different extremes on how they operate, and so the phase relationships all matter. So
this is just when you're playing. This isn't talking about like background stuff either. Like background noises.
No, that's not even the gain structure, that what you're talking about. So for you guys, you don't have to worry about it because you don't have it. So it's like, there's a party that's like, I don't even care. But just know that like, those are little things that come into play, but you're not there yet. So if we ever come in and set up a bunch of drum mics, it'd be good to hear like what I'm talking about and for you to understand, because it's really helpful to know, like, if you ever go to a concert and you're like, man, the drums just sound super punchy, or the bass sounds really good, it's because a lot of the guys that are running sound have spent a lot of time with what the phase relationships are to one another, and that's how because they're trying to get the speakers all moving together. It's interesting, so for a long time, people thought that when, speakers, when they fire, they actually go back. So think of like a gun. So if I shoot a gun, the gun goes this way, and the bullet goes that way, right? So speaker, you want to go this way, right? So a lot of people, though, set up systems where when, your initial attack on an instrument, the speaker is actually going forward. So it's almost like catching up to the sound wave, so it weakens it. So there's like all these little things when you get into sound that you have to understand how things operate. You don't have to worry about all that so much right now, but it's just good to go over, just to kind of like whet the appetite of like, hey, this is kind of. So if on a Sunday morning, if you walked up here, if someone said, hey, I need to have a connection for my instrument, do you feel comfortable that you understand how the stage is set up right now to be able to make a connection? Good? Cool? At least understand? Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Well, that's how the stage is set up. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm assuming there's like a reasoning why like we plugged into the amp here, but like did the alleviate any problems now and need someone else to plug in?
No, I had a direction. So what are you talking about with the box? So I think that. No, I still plug into the amp because remember the direction. I never followed the link. I don't remember why, because I heard that these changes in the Yeah. So I think that what was happening before, and Tim can correct me, but the reason that amps were helpful is that if something had gotten changed where they couldn't get your instruments in the main speakers, the amplifiers on stage were nice to have because then you could at least turn them up and try to fill the room. Now the way that we just made this change the other night. Now we have in-ear monitoring that's actually located at the different instruments, and so you don't need an amplifier because now you can have your in-ears in and then hear everything. So that's what but the caveat of that is we need to make sure that that's always going to the house, because if you ran into a situation where you didn't have that, then you would be like, oh no, how are we going to get the sound of the piano to feed the room? So that would be why that. Does that answer your question? Cool. Any other questions?
How do these connect? Are these also the same quarter inch?
Nope. So that's a good question. So we're actually going to run that later today, but these connect from this. So each one of these ports. So there's a there's a line that's been run from all the way back there. It's been run all the way up to here into the wall. And so this plugs in here. And then this is a distributor. So all of the channels from that console come into here. And then you basically have a single Cat5 or Cat6 cable. And this Cat6 cable, I'll show you. Well, basically, you would pull one of these up like so. Yep. And it's a little twisty. So what's that? We want to go in the in. So now it's going to provide power to that box. We turn this on. There we go. Sorry, it was just turned on. So now check this out. So if he goes over the keys, so just go over the keys. Turn the volume all the way up. Your volume all the way up? Oh, might be on this.
So is this like connected wirelessly together?
Yeah, so that's going to go over there as well. We're going to run a cable just like this. It's going to run underneath this riser and go all the way over. I don't think you're plugged in. I think it's unplugged. Which channel? Keyboard 11? Let's try that.
Okay, so this.
So you see on number 11?
And the system's connected to that. Yep. So that's how it.
See? So now if I click 11 and I turn his volume up in my ear, now hear him in your ears. Yeah. So like for vocal coming in, if this vocal is actually plugged in, I don't know if it is. So this vocal should be plugged in, and it could run. We're not on the church's scene. We're on this Chinese church's scene. But what we should do is we should see from this microphone that this is actually also another thing. Hey, 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 hey. So it's in 3. Check 1, 2. Check, check, check. Hey, hey. So see how that one's coming in? Yeah, so this is routed weird. At the console, they have it going into 2 channels.
I wonder if 7
Well, it doesn't mean it could be switched. This down because we obviously don't want this to look weird. So we'd run a quick gaff, and then you'd have. Eventually, what we're going to do is we're going to put plates like that little plate. We're going to put plates in the stage, and then you would just put that right in like. I use in there. But in the future, what you can do is you can actually set little room mics, like we could hang them, or we could have them to where you have a channel where you could turn up the crowd in your ear. So even though you have ears in, you can hear the people singing, and it'll feel like almost like you don't have any ears in, but you control everything in your ears. So it's just a way of connecting to the congregation without feeling, when you put anything, if you take both your fingers and stick them in your ear, it all of a sudden sounds really muffled. Well, it's not going to sound muffled, but what you're doing is you're taking down the house volume and you're wanting to make sure you have more direct volume.
Right.
The big benefit of that is if I'm singing with keys, I don't want to hear sound hitting that wall and coming back to me because I'm already going to be out of tune. So now I have a direct signal, and we can look at each other like, oh, what are you playing? And we can really hear one another. So it's something that should help us be more together. If you ever want to run a metronome or a click track, or you want to do a special, and you have a track that's going to play, and you're singing to it. How do you know? How do you if you're just playing it in the house? How do you know what's right? Well, now you have a way of saying. In front of the choir.
Hello.
Yeah. So if you're playing and Yep, it's all stored internally, correct. And then you also have, when you were sharing, Elizabeth, about I don't want things too screechy, so you have. it's stored, and you actually select
Okay.
a spot.
Okay.
We'd have to look in the manual. I used to try to remember all that stuff, and now I'm just like, let's look in the manual, because it changes all the time.
So it's not only
Correct? That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So on a Sunday morning, if you had to come up here and you had to plug something in, do you feel like you have an understanding of how the stage is set up that brings signal? So let's break for a few minutes, and then we're going to be back. So now you should hear me in.
She was like, I heard that.
You probably could hear keys better than anything.
Oh, yeah, I heard.
Yeah. And then your vocal you should hear. You're talking to it, I believe. Let's see. That was number 7?
I'm
not sure that the connection of that is really... It was a little strange. It was like coming in and out, which could be a issue with the channel. Oh, man. Okay. Huh. Yeah. That's so strange. Hey, check one.
Hey. Testing 1 2. 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 Let's try this. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Hey, check 1 2. Check 1.